The index of Nigeria's top 10 banks shed 2.6% after index provider MSCI says it would leave the country in its frontier index until at least November, when it will again assess investor access to the market, and also after Etisalat Nigeria failed to agree a debt renegotiation deal with lenders. MSCI says Nigeria would remain a frontier market with the possibility of being downgraded to stand-alone status, leading shares to retreat, ending a 5-day rally. Market analysts indicate that the newly introduced investors and exporters forex exchange window targeted at foreign portfolio investors could earn Nigeria reprieve from being demoted from the MSCI's Frontier Markets Index. Well, analysts say the Nigerian stock market is currently on its best bullish run on record after gaining a massive 25% year-to-date and 3 trillion naira in a quarter. Well, let's talk more about this, and joining me in the studio to do that is market analyst Muktyar Mohammed. Thank you for your time, Muktyar. Yes, the Nigerian All-Share Index fell for the second straight day on Thursday to 1.6%. The stock market snapped a 5-day losing streak on Tuesday after shedding a remarkable 2.6%. Well, just before we go into issues of Etisalat, of course, and of course the first is the MSCI. Let's start with that. Of course, both issues actually affected the downward trend in the Nigerian stock market. Yes, MSCI is still not sure about his decision to either upgrade or downgrade, but of course there is that indication that there might be a downgrade, or that's to stand alone. But what would you think is responsible for this? I know he gave some reasons that investors are still skeptical about what's happening. So in your own view, what would you say this is the implication of this, or what would you say this is responsible for?
I think by the inability of them to confirm us as one of the frontier markets and to move it to November actually was responsible for the downward trend you experience in the market. Remember, the same MISC index have already upgraded us from 7% to 9%. So at that time, investors were so bullish about the Nigerian market. The foreign investors are also still bullish about the Nigerian market in terms of valuation. But now they are not looking at, I think another thing that came to play during the week was the oil price coming down. So foreign investors are beginning to say, can this forex policy introduced by the CBN be sustained in a downward trend when you have oil price going down? So I think that's where the skepticism came to play, and I'm sure that's why they have to move it forward to November to see whether we can sustain that foreign exchange, that window for export and for investors. So they want to see how we can sustain it. They believe if we can sustain it, then we'll be listed as one of the frontier market.
Yes, of course, we know that that delay would save the country. Looking at some other agencies, some other rating agencies that had delisted us, like the JP Morgan, like the Barclays in February 2016, but perhaps with what you have said, that the fluctuation in the oil markets, perhaps it keeps going further. What would be the implication?
Well, we've always seen that coming, but relatively now we've seen the stability in the forex market happening between 366, 364, which is almost the same thing like what you have in the interbank rate. No, I mean, investors, what they give to manufacturers and those that are actually allowed to access this forex. So it's a good omen. Then when you look at the interbank market, has stabilized for a very long time at 315. So it looks good, but now how can we sustain it? We could see that the government is trying to diversify, not to forget that the government just did the diaspora bond for Nigeria, which was oversubscribed, and so they have $300 million already. Okay. So I don't think there's any cause for alarm. I think as far as the stability in the forex market, I think the CBN is on top of it. And even with the downward trend in the oil price, and then when you look at our production level was shaking yesterday when there was a pipeline by Militant bumping a pipeline in Bayelsa. So that also will begin to create a sense of systemic problem. But we don't think it will be long, and we know that the authority will act fast. We know that the acting president was actually the one that relatively spoke to the Niger Delta people to have this peace that we enjoy. I'm sure he's going to put the machinery in order so that there will be a quick resolution of whatever problem we have.
Yes, that's an interesting statement you made. There shouldn't be a cause for alarm. But one would have expected that with the investor exporter forex window created by the CBN targeting foreign portfolio investors, one would have thought that that was enough to actually dissuade the MSCI from or for making a decision at that point. But what other measures do you think the CBN should be doing now? Because fine, this has kept them at bay at the moment, and it has saved us that of not being delisted, of not being demoted now. But what do you think the CBN should be doing now? Because this is an indication that you might eventually be demoted to stand alone.
I think the CBN has two monsters that they are fighting. The monster of inflation and that of growth. Now, the good thing about it is that when it comes to monetary policy, it has to deal with inflation, while the fiscal policy has to do with growth. So I think they have looked at it and they're trying to tame inflation. That's why we are where we are today. So I think now that they were fighting inflation, at the same time fighting stability in the forex market. So now we could see that there seems to be a steady decline in the inflation rate, and we see relatively stability in the exchange rate. So we expect the CBN to continue with this short gap measure. It's a short gap measure. Now, how can we get out of it? It's a long story altogether, because we are still a country that depends solely on importing of a lot of products into Nigeria. So until we diversify and begin to see other areas, begin to earn foreign exchange from other areas, we'll keep having this challenge. And now Nigeria looks creative, look innovative at the falling price of oil. Just today we learned that the sharing formula this month was high. So we look very good when things begin to look up. And then we say a lot we have to do for things to look up when things are bad. And when things begin to look up, we forgot about what we should do to maintain this. I think so now there's peace, there's relatively peace in the Niger Delta. Nobody's going into dialogue with them to conclude whatever peace process they've stayed in. There's also the oil price was doing fairly well until now. And even with that, if you look at the rates the legislators added to it, we still are at bay at $45. The executive recommended $42. The legislation weighted up to $45. So we are still there. We've not had any serious problem. And remember that this export-import FX window has also been able to generate about $2.2 billion into the economy. So I think we are good as it stands now. But on what we want to do going forward, there's still a lot of work to be done by the CBN. Of
course, that news from the MSCI and the Etisalat issue had an effect on the stock market, because we saw it falling to 2.6% on Wednesday. All right, let's see how trading is today. Just before we go on, Muktyar, yes, Nigeria's stocks closed on a negative note today. All-share index is 32,122.14, down by negative 2.45%. Well, that's the closing result as we're getting it now. All right, let's go to the Etisalat issue. When you heard that story, what do you think? What played in your mind? What's happening between the banks and Etisalat?
You see, we have to, when they say when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. And we need to look at which grass is going to suffer. And when you look at it, the subscribers under Etisalat will suffer if there's a lot of breakdown in terms of slides not able to begin to give them their value on their lines. Then you look at the bigger picture, the bank. If there's a systematic collapse of the bank, it's not just going to be one sector that will be affected, all sectors that will be affected. Now, then you look at the foreign investment aspect, knowing that Etisalat, as it stands, is operating like a foreign company that has its logo in Nigeria. Then again, you have to look at the legal implication of whatever they have done, because actually they went into a legal agreement with these banks. Have they faulted? They are not denying the fact that they are faulted, but they are only saying, okay, give us time. Now, when it comes to giving of time, the banks really know that they are in serious trouble, because the non-performing loans are going higher. So they need to bring a stop to that, and so they need to get some of their money from Etisalat. Now, knowing that Etisalat also borrowing this money from them in dollars and planning to pay them in naira also is not ethically good for business. It's like you are trying to take advantage of the system to get on your debtor. So for me, Etisalat should do the rightful thing, get to sit with the banks, talk with them, and begin to make modality
but
for payments.
they actually sat with the banks and they are requesting for a restructuring in their payments and on how to liquidate this loan that they have gotten. But it's not sitting down well with the banks.
You see,
and one of the position, or what the position they are taking, is that, okay, at this time when we borrowed that money from you, we had the naira to the dollar at this rate. But now at this rate, it's so high and we cannot go on with this. Okay, let's restructure it and see how we can pay. But it seems not to be going well with the banks.
It's business that have gone so you just have to do your own part. Yes, Etisalat will call for restructuring, but even in the midst of the restructuring, the banks also are there to make profit. And remember that they gave Etisalat a lot of money, which they feel could have become into other sectors that also would have helped those sectors and also grow their balance sheet. Remember, the banks are answerable to their shareholders also, and they have a problem that has to do with liquidity. And you're not talking of just one bank, you're talking about 13 banks that are giving Etisalat money. So they need to get their money back, but they need to look at innovative ways where they could get their money back. Because we saw the issue whereby at a point they said they were going to take the shareholder and they're going to collect the shareholding structure, and then the NNCC has to step in. And I said, where have the NCC been all this while? Wow. So they don't have to allow this issue to have gone this bad before they are trying to step in. And now they are stepping in. They're not stepping in as an unbiased umpire. They're stepping in as a biased umpire
because unfortunately they cannot be transferred.
Yeah, they are taking sides with Etisalat. I said, look, you cannot transfer. The bank cannot.
But really, that's what's in the regulation.
Look,
the licenses or the license of Etisalat cannot be transferred.
We look at what was the agreement, the legal agreement that Etisalat went with the banks. At that time, if you default, what was the agreement that will happen? Well, at that time, such loan signing should not be done without the input from the NCC.
Don't you think the banks should have known this, that, okay, you cannot take over Etisalat or any other telecom company if you default on your loan?
You see, let's look at it
this way. Okay, so what should be the sanction? Or
let's look at it this way. The bank might not be there to take over. The banks are like, okay, you transfer this share to us. The bank themselves could begin to look for investors to take part of these shares while they get their money back. So it all depends on a win-win situation that the bank is trying to. The bank is saying, okay, look, this is the the amount you are owing us, and it amounts to so number of the shareholding structure. And they're saying, okay, give us that share. They're not saying they want to take over Etisalat. And remember that even at the rate they're doing, it's not a 100% takeover. There are other investors that are in Etisalat. So they also have not relinquished their own. Remember, it's just Mudebela, the one in United Arab Emirates, that is saying, look, we're going to answer up it completely. But others are not saying. So I think the banks are not saying they want to, they don't know how to do business with telecom. They can't go and take over.
Okay, so in your own view, do you think actually transferring the shares is what matters? Because if you leave Etisalat in business, they may be able to actually pay their loan. It's not like Etisalat is bankrupt or insolvent.
You see, what the bank is saying, and if you look at your report, the bank is saying that there was mismanagement from the management aspects. She believed that the management said they came to a point that they were no more servicing the debt. And I'm sure before it gets to public domain, the bank may have written letters, countless letters to them, let them meet for a meeting. Maybe at that time, Etisalat was thinking they would be going to be able to sort it out. And remember, the bank actually said they gave Etisalat that type of loan because they know who Etisalat foreign backers are, which are one of the #1 international investors in every part of the world. So the banks are not, the bank are saying, look, the pedigree of the people behind Etisalat should be able to offset this.
And that takes me to what some analysts are saying, that the banks are seeing Etisalat as a cash cow. Do you believe in that?
Well, you just need to look at how many calls goes in every day from Etisalat. You just need to look at, look, we have, the challenge came that we had recession. The challenge came that there was exchange rate volatility, so the equipment became more expensive. Management of their base station become more expensive. At that time, everything was all both diesel and I quite sympathize with Etisalat. But I think Etisalat should do the needful by sitting down with the banks and coming over with agreeable ways of going forward. Etisalat cannot, at this time, be insisting that the bank goes by their own term and condition, they need to look at both sides and then begin to see how they can come up with a win-win situation.
Okay, and well, of course, Etisalat also needs to treat the situation in such a way that, as you said in your initial statement, that subscribers will not suffer, because already some subscribers have actually think that, oh, Etisalat has actually gone bankrupt, and some of them have ported. So, really, they have ported, but it's not so, and Etisalat seems to still be in business. And what's your stand with the CBN coming in at this point? They seem to be the negotiator.
Look, unfortunately, the CBN should have, everything that's happening now should have been done earlier on.
Should have been involved in this
remember when you have large loan like that going out, the CBN too also should have been able to remember that the CBN is the regulator.
Are involved.
Yeah, the depositors are involved. And look, the banking sector is a high-risk sector. Any collapse of any, if you look at the banks that are involved in this Etisalat
deal, the big banks in Nigeria, the top 10 banks.
So you cannot just sit down there and watch them go into this thing and just decide to say, look, you're not interested in whatever happened. They should know that if Etisalat faltered, there is going to be a systematic failure in the banking sector. And if you look at that, it's already showing, this trend is already showing with the non-performing loans going up. So they need to sit down. If people are saying that AMCOM should come into this deal, I don't think it's time for bringing in AMCOM. If you want to bring AMCOM here, you're now modeling the whole issue. Now going back, and remember, AMCOM is supposed to have wind off for this for a while now. No. And again, we've looked at, when you look at the antecedent of AMCOM, any company that AMCOM takes over, at the end of the day, those companies just go under. All
right. We'll see how this plays out in coming days. Market analyst Muktyar Mohammed, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.